Jacob. The agreement, like you mentioned, what it essentially allows is for importers and exporters across both countries to be able to invoice and pay in local currency. So obviously, transaction costs come down. I mean, we save both time and money. It's important. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the trade between the two countries was about $85 billion. And Mr. Modi himself mentioned that, it should move to 100 billion before G20. So there are ambitious numbers being floated around. They want to kind of facilitate that. But interestingly, Jacob, I think the reason this agreement is going to be watched a little closely is also because, on and off over the last couple of decades, we've heard about moving away from the US dollar as one of the dominant currencies of the world, right? And although there is no substitute, they're calling it, if I have to use a very dramatic term, is de-dollarisation. But this is possibly a kind of step in that direction for India as well. It's not just India. You've had Brazil, you've had Southeast Asian countries, China, of course. Everyone's been talking about it. But the reason this...
Oh, and we thought Bitcoin was the future. But that's a very good point you're making. Under Modi, we see increasing interest in the Middle East. Tell me about that.
It's not just Bitcoin that's interesting. Yes, the Middle East is interesting as well. I think we call it the look Western, look at West. There are many ways in which to kind of call it. There are many phrases, but clearly, I mean, ever since the Modi government has been in power, there has been absolutely no doubt that we are looking at the Middle East with a fresh perspective. And for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't need to recount that. I mean, there are economic ties, there is defense and security ties, there is cross-border transnational kind of terrorism that we need to collaborate and work on. There is oil, energy. I mean, people, there are like millions of Indians settled there. So for all the right reasons, yes, the Middle East is very, very important. Historically, we've always been close, right? We've had a long shared history. But in the past few decades, India's been very cautious, very, very cautious and a little aloof when it came to the Middle East policy. That has changed. We've seen the number of visits. We've seen the number of agreements. We've talked about that as well, right? The number of pacts and agreements that have been inked. So going forward, I think absolutely there is, in terms of the administration making the right noises and sending the right signals, there is no doubt that it is important. We are looking west.
India being on the verge of declared the most populated country in the world, if not already, is India seeing itself as a global power?
It's not just linked to population numbers. Yes, of course, we need to carry the weight of so many people, but also I think changing economic situations, better opportunities and growth. Yes, I think the past couple of years, there is this feeling, it's not just the government making those noises, like I use that phrase. Even in India, the youth, there is a sense of optimism about, when there is growth and when there is opportunity, it brings hope. So yes, on an individual level, I do hope that most of us would kind of look forward to a better life and more opportunities. But even on a country, on a nationwide level, I think it is only natural to then want to exert a little more influence and find a place. I mean, at the end of the day, the current establishment was it's been carried forward from World War II. It's being carried forward since then. And history demonstrates again and again, change is the only constant, and you need to constantly kind of rebalance and rejig that. And I think the world in the moment is seeing that huge geopolitical shift that is taking place slowly, but I think surely taking place. Mm-hmm. And I think India needs to find its own voice.
Getting back to the rupee, what's the forecast? Is India trying to make the rupee influential outside India?
Not just India, again, Jacob, like I mentioned earlier, the US dollar has had globally, I think it's been the king of all currency for decades now. And that has its advantages, clearly, but it also has its disadvantages. And if I had to marry that to the question that you just asked me, it's not just India, but also China, for example, which is much larger. There is this need to say our currencies need to carry value and weight proportionate to our economic influence and proportionate to our population and proportionate to a lot of other things, right? So it's not just India looking to kind of break free a little bit from the whole dollar dependence, if I can call it that. I think there are so many countries, including Saudi Arabia, which has been a long-term US ally. I think they kind of signaled as well that they're willing to accept payment in other currencies. So again, these are all tiny signals that tell us where the world is headed.
Okay, Ekta, thank you very much for that.